Tales of the Rot, written in 2014 by Anonymous. You have always heard stories when you were a little filly about the Rot, some creature that would take moth deep into the forest where they were never seen again. Of course, now that you are older, you realize this was only a cautionary tale that parents would tell their young ones to keep them from wandering into the forest nearby. Still, you're always curious about the forest and why it seems so hollow from the outside. You never recall seeing any living thing go in or out of the thick sea of trees and briars, not even timber wolves. Still, you swallow whatever fear or worry you had to brave the forest entrance. Just as you imagined, it was dark. Trees were crooked with their branches that looked as if they were withering yet frozen in time. Bramble and briars weaved through the forest floor around the trees, making it difficult for you to traverse the ground. You spread your wings and flutter off the ground carefully, being sure not to get your wings caught on anything, as you pressed onward through the dark. Something was strange ahead. You slow your pace and squint to observe the figure before you with better lighting. You slowly manage to figure out what it is that you were looking at. A pod stood up against the tree nearby you, except the pod looked more defined in shape, almost pony-like. The pod was burst open with the ground around it surrounded by little mushrooms and fungi. You grimace at the scene and wonder what in the world it was, but left to yourself with the idea that it was some odd fungus formation. You figured you'd had enough of this forest for one day and decided to turn back. Just as you did, you had the oddest sensation of something looming behind you. Your heart races. Do you look behind? What if this something was there? Or maybe it was all in your head. Wait, you know what was behind you? That weird fungus. That's right. It's just the feeling of that odd shape behind you is all. You try to shake it off, but look behind you anyways. Just as you guessed, it was that pod. Lonely yet becoming in a solemn way. Your eyes focus on the hollow in its burst-out form. Maybe it was just in your mind, but the form looked more and more like a pony with each passing moment, like it was reaching out towards you. Unfortunately, the current form of it was far from being anything definable, and perhaps it was just in your mind. You shake off the uneasiness from your subconscious and move back the way you came. You almost feel yourself pick up the pace as you wanted to get your tail out of there, as if something was walking right behind you. Your mind kept going back to that pod, that loathsome, beckoning fungus as if it was crying out. You were almost to the entrance now. Just a few more feet. You decide to give the forest one last look. As you turned your head, your hind legs were grabbed and dragged back into the forest. You scream out for help as you were pulled back in, kicking and fluttering your wings wildly. You couldn't fight it. It kept pulling you further and further until you were back at the pod. The burst husk of some poor soul stood before your terrified form as an omen to your ill fate. Some form peered over the husk, which you dare not look at, but at the corner of your eye was some undefinable creature that was twisted. Its body was inky black that dripped onto the ground with wet splats, and its face was pure white which looked of porcelain. You sob and struggle as everything began to sink in. What it was, what was going to happen to you. If only you had listened.